welcome back to Redmond Reviews with me, Chris Garlock, and Michael Redmond, of course. Michael, how you doing?
Hi, Chris.
Okay, no idle chit-chat to get started this time. We have got the famous Game 10. We've been talking about this. I took a look at it, and it is one crazy Wild West of a game. In fact, it's such a complicated game that we're going to have to do a two-parter. So we'll do the first part up to a key point, and then we'll be back tomorrow night, same time, same station, with part two.
It's sort of like two games in one anyway. So yeah,
at least two, right?
Yeah.
So why don't you give us the 30,000-foot view for to get us started?
Okay, it's going to start with a new move by White, and actually before that becomes there's an unusual pincer by Black, and then a new move for White to handle it, and then they have this series of fights that they like. It goes in a half circle around the board in a sequence of fights. And so there's these little fights that are contained, but they're very exciting, each one in its own.
I cannot wait to see the commentary on this. Yeah. All right, let's just dive right in.
Okay, we're going to start with, for the first time, I think, it's AlphaGo playing the Kobayashi opening, which is this opening that looks like it's going to start to be a Chinese opening, but instead Black plays this Kakari on the in the lower left, and then this extension. So this is an opening that was started to be popular several decades ago, and it's said that Kobayashi Koichi sort of perfected it in a way. And so when White plays this Kakari, the theory of that time was that Black would play a high pincer, and then if White plays this move, this is kind of the textbook example of how White can go wrong, because Black can play a peep here and then extend on the upper side, the right side, and White doesn't really have anything to do on the lower side. Like if White tries to break into the territory here, and I've done this with you before, I believe, Chris, but there's just no way that White can live, like even if Black just plays something like this. Sure. This is just a dead shape on the side. So this is going to end as a disaster for White. And maybe it happened once in a pro game, but it's not something that White wants to do. So White ends up here with a rather heavy group. It's not alive yet, and Black is playing on both sides. So this is a success for Black. And actually people stopped doing that, like with White, instead of playing here. Nowadays, people would be usually doing something like this, and Black would, I would expect Black to find some way to make sure these two white stones don't connect up. So a move like this would also be pretty standard. Most modern games, like most recent games, I've seen Black playing here, which is more concentrating on the upper part of the right side, just to sort of fight a hair. And there's a few games that have started this way. And as far as I can tell, this is just going to turn into this big fight starting from the upper right and spreading out into the center of the board. So this is, we've seen it recently in one of the title matches in Japan and Korean games, I think. So top pros are playing this every so often. So this is how White usually handles that. I don't really know how AlphaGo would do it. I sort of suspect that AlphaGo is White might find some different move for White. I'd be interested to see how it turns out. But we know that, yeah. But instead, AlphaGo plays this low pincer.
Wow.
And this is very unusual. I looked it up. There's a few games in which it's more common to find this shape when Black has played the mini Chugoku, the mini Chinese opening.
Okay.
And that version of the Chinese opening where it's one space closer. So I don't really know what to call it. It's not the mini Chinese, but it's the Chinese opening with the Black stone one space down. Instead of having it at this point, Black has moved it one over, and then White comes in later sometimes.
Okay.
And so then you can get this shape. And then sometimes black will play away in a special position. But usually you don't get this shape where black pincers after white is played. So white plays here. This is a brand new move. I don't know. This would be an overplay. Mm-hmm. This is a move that white would like to play, but we can see that with black stones on both sides, black's just going to cut here.
Push and cut, yeah.
And the ladder favors white. So the ladder favors white, but if white just takes it, then black can connect underneath. And we have this shape. Some players get mixed up here. They think white's got a ponnuki. But actually, we don't call that a ponnuki just because white's taking one stone. There's that extra stone at A, which is wasting all of the efficiency white gets by taking that stone.
It's almost, not quite, but it could become a dangle, a little dumpling fairly easily.
Well, actually, that stone at A, arguably, it's better not to have that stone at all because it's filling a point that could be a white's eye there. So it's really bad for white. So this would be bad. Otherwise, if white plays this fighting move, there's a number of ways that can proceed from here, but this is just one example of how black can capture the lower side. This is actually a pretty good way locally for white to play because A is the tesuji that set up the jump out at B. So this is the tesuji that white can use to handle the situation, but the result is bad anyway because black has this nice position on the lower side. So I wouldn't do that with white. It's just too dangerous. But this move, usually I think that when confronted with this pincer here, usually people tend to play away or something, or try something very unusual. I haven't actually seen this move, so it might be a new move. Well, the idea is, of course, to press down on black. If black plays on this side, white can press down. And this is, again, it's just one way it could turn out, but this looks okay for white. White is pressing black down on the third line and has reduced the potential black has in this whole area on the right side and lower sides of the board. And still we can see that the lower side is not really black's territory yet. And white has some potential towards the center. So this would be in a position where white has been sort of invading an area that was controlled by black. This result would be satisfactory for white. I would be happy with white.
So you like this for white? Okay, yeah. Yeah, I mean, black looks pushed down.
Yeah. And so so black plays here to get a nice position on the right side. And now white can press here. So we can see that that marked move there was actually setting up this pressing move.
Yeah.
And you might ask, what happens if black plays here anyway?
What happens if black plays there anyway?
I made some variations.
So folks, actually it's going to be interesting. So folks will have the entire SGF file, so that you can even take a peek ahead, even after what we covered today. But there are a lot of branches.
A lot of branches, yeah.
A lot of branches.
Well, my inclination is I try to keep it simple, but this game it was just impossible. It was just there's a lot more branches than I wanted to put in, but I needed to put the branches in to understand it myself. So that's my excuse for having a lot of experience.
Nobody is complaining. Nobody.
All right. So this is a position where white plays very strongly now, and that extra stone on the fifth line there is going to help white. Firstly, it makes it difficult for black to escape with that stone in the center. So let's just do one example here where black bumps against white. And it's good for white to play from this side. And at this point, black has two choices. Is black going to connect? If black connects, white can pull back here and then kill. So that was pretty easy. But if black, instead of connecting, if black plays the Hanesugi here, black still needs one more move in the corner.
Yes, he does. Yep.
And so that's going to be very bad for black. The black stones have been killed.
Ouch.
This whole thing here is very dangerous for black. There's all sorts of fights that could happen after black plays here, but they're almost all of them are going to be bad for black after white plays here. I can't see any good results for black. And so this would be an overplay. So instead, black plays underneath here, and white extends, and we get this. So it's a brand new position. It looks actually, I would feel okay with white. White has avoided being attacked here, and black does have a bit of a low shape. Like if black connects underneath, this locally, this is the move. In fact, this is the move I would play with black. This is the only move I think of playing. And locally, it's a fine shape on the lower side, but you can see most of those black stones are on the third line. So white gets sente to play away. And so white is giving black a local profit on the lower side, but white will have potential to control the rest of the board because white has the tempo. White has sente now. And so, and black will continue by taking the right side. So this would be a game where black is taking a lot of territory first, and white would have a kind of a moyo in the upper left area. And it would be about even. This is how I would play with black. But again, AlphaGo doesn't really go for the territory that much. And I think this is a typical move. Like it shows AlphaGo's wish to control open areas of the board. And I think human pros, including myself, might be a bit biased towards getting territory. And so it's in a way it's the more balanced move, and I sort of like this move. Although I say I would play here, I sort of like these moves where AlphaGo plays to control the rest of the board, and offering some local loss. It's
a huge move.
It's an important area. Of course, this is a huge move. Excuse me. White plays the kosumitsuke, what we call the kick, I guess. You know, they didn't have kick before I came to Japan, so I never learned that word.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they called it the kosumitsuke then. They were really into the Japanese words.
Right.
Yeah. But covering here on the lower side, it's a huge move too. So I wouldn't want to allow white to play this move, and that's why I would have connected underneath there. And this is big because not only does it change the scene on the lower side here, it also sort of prepares to make some trouble for black in the lower right corner.
I was wondering about that.
And this is sort of interesting because it's a place where people could easily go wrong. So I want to go into some variations here. Black plays away. If black plays away, that is. This would be a nice place. And white could play here. And the tesuji for white, the good move here is to play the double hana here. And black will play from above, and white covers here. And this is where it branches out. Like white, after playing the double hana at A, white covers here to try to cut black off from the right side. And this is a position that you often see in a problem book, a tesuji book. And they tell you to play here. But it's slightly different. So people who have, in those books that are supposed to prepare you to be a dan player and stuff like that, sometimes they show you this tesuji, which is a way of stopping white from connecting underneath, because obviously if white plays here, black's going to capture from this side.
Right.
It stops white from connecting underneath and kills the white stones. So it's a double purpose move there. So it's really a nice tesuji that black can use. But the problem is that it's a tesuji that you can only use if black has a group with more liberties. In this case, black doesn't have enough liberties to make it work. So if we just go through the variation here, we can see that black is pretty cramped here. And there's no way to avoid a ko. Like this would be a ko.
Wow, yeah.
So this would be actually, although it's the tesuji that you might find in a textbook, it's the worst thing that black can do. So this is, just to go back to that move, it's a really neat tesuji, but you have to be careful about the semei factor there when you use this move. And so otherwise, if black connects here, well, this is just going to be, it's going to be possible for black to live, but you can see black is losing a lot of points on the lower side. That's really bad. Black's shape on the left hand of the lower side is really messed up completely. So this would be good for white.
It's great for white.
Yeah. So what black does is black plays the hane here. And this is what I sort of expect to happen. And so actually black could have left it, but I've made a mark at A there to show that white can make some trouble potentially here later. And this is going to be really complicated, but for instance, something like this, you can see in this case, it would be a kind of a co-situation developing. And you can see how that extra stone there is helping by setting up this cut here. So there's some trouble white can make here. Like if black pushes through, white can then do stuff like this to trade to the, and black would take 3 stones, but would not have, but white would be able to get some stuff on the right side. So there's a some potential of a trade here. So black could have left that, but there would be all this stuff that could happen afterwards. And so I guess I would sort of want to leave it at this point because this is such a big move. But AlphaGo plays here. This is also a very big move, and it makes more than 10 points in the corner, and it gives black a lot more strength on the right side of the board because now black has a potential connection there. Of course, if white covers, then this is a great trade for black. Black would just add another stone to the right side. And now the lower right corner is completely black's territory. Good for black. And also, actually, this move is taking away white's eye space. And although the white stones are fairly strong at this time, AlphaGo is really keen at taking away eye space. Like, eye space is a big deal for AlphaGo. It's a big deal for most players, but even AlphaGo, even though this white group looks like it's sort of thickness, AlphaGo is still looking at a potential attack there. So it's an example of how AlphaGo likes to take away eyes from a group. So white plays the pincer here.
Wow.
Yeah. This is really close to the black stones there. But
it seems very tight.
It's very close. I think the extra value of having the stone so close is that it makes a forcing move here for white. Or this move, or the Hanesugi starting from this move. So white can play those moves at some time and secure the corner territory. So that's part of the reason for white playing so close. And you would sort of expect black to continue with a fight on the upper side now, like be maybe the most natural move, and white would probably follow up with something like this. And I'd say this is an even fight. Okay. And this is what I would sort of expect to happen. Instead, AlphaGo plays here. So again, this is also a feasible move. It's a move that I wouldn't mind playing myself. But it's very flexible, isn't it? The way that black can just just leave those 2 stones on the upper side. And it's a move that's, in that way, it's sort of counterintuitive. It's something that on a bad day I wouldn't even think of that move. I think I would be pretty happy to come up with that move, even whether it works or not. And of course, it's setting up the 3-3-point invasion. Like if white plays something really very, very tight, like this, like if we have white doing something like this, then maybe black could play an invasion here, and something like this. At some point, this would work very well with that black stone on the left side. So black's looking at stuff like this to do. So white plays here, and this move takes me by surprise. It's a very AlphaGo-like move. It loves those shoulder hits. But in this position where black has this big moyo on the right side, you usually don't want to do this because it's going to make it, it's going to allow black to sort of build on that moyo.
Yeah, sure.
And especially, like, I would be afraid to do it because that right side is so big that at some point white's going to have to jump into it.
Right.
And white will in this game. We're going to see white do that. But it's pretty scary for white, and even I wouldn't be sure if I would be able to live if I did what AlphaGo did later in the game. And I think a lot of players would seriously mess up at that point.
Wow.
But it sort of becomes necessary when white does this for white to have the plan to dive into that moyo at some point, because otherwise it's going to be too much black territory. So white covers. It's a kind of a vulgar way to play, but the idea is to try to attack those 2 black stones on the upper side on as large a scale as possible.
Yeah, pretty grand scale, yeah.
White's sort of heating up the upper side here, and that will give white a local offensive, and it will mean that black will probably have to deal with that first, so white will have time to move back to the right side after that. For the time being, that side is more important, I'd say. So black plays the honey on top of 2 stones. So that's the move that we have in the Go proverb. You play honey on top of 2 stones.
Yeah.
And then when you play that honey at A, this double honey that follows it is sort of, it comes with as a package with the honey on the top of 2 stones. So you have to remember,
it's a deal. You get one, you get the other.
Yeah. So you want to play the double honey too. And then black pushes, and white plays the cut. And so this is a natural variation where white has built up on the upper side, and naturally black has got a very nice position on the right side. And I would personally, I would be a bit worried about how I'm going to invade that right side. It's going to be a very close fight. It's going to happen next in the game, but for the time being, black has to deal with the upper side stones. And so this is a move that's worth. This would be a move that anyone would play. I would play it, and I think it's an idea that amateur players can learn from too. The idea is that if white is going to play something like this, it's going to make it easy for black, because black can just switch to the left side. And in this case, black has gotten enough back. Like, black can sacrifice the 2 marked stones, and black has gotten the whole corner back, plus the fact that black's group on the left side is alive now. So black has gotten the value out of sacrificing those 2 stones if black gets the whole corner. And this is sort of what you would expect to happen. But AlphaGo doesn't let that happen. Against this move, white plays here, which is usually bad, but in this case, white is sort of forcing those marked stones to move out, because the profit that black gets, let's jump to this move. The profit that black gets by playing this honey here is attached to those 2 stones on the upper side. So black doesn't really realize that profit unless black actually runs away with those 2 stones. So when black plays here and white plays here, white is forcing black to save those 2 stones. So a small local loss, which is not really as big as you might think it is, because this loss would have been much worse. This loss would have been much worse for white. So a small local loss, but in the process is forcing black to save those 2 stones. So now black plays this probe. And again, this is a really neat move. Like, if white plays from the left side here, black's going to get a huge profit on this side. And then black would still have the option of, for instance, later on doing stuff like this. And without trying to connect to the 2 stones, black would still have potential to live in the corner with a ko or something. So before playing this move here, before playing this move, which would sort of commit black to saving that group, before playing that, black probes here once to see how white answers that. And if white plays, let's see. White plays against it this way. Like, if white plays here, then black still can go down here and connect underneath. And if white plays on this side, there's the dodgy of this move and stuff. So this would be bad for white. So white plays straight down. This is correct. And black plays the honey, and white plays here. So the question is, how is black going to run out? And I'll show you first the move that black wants to play. But can't actually play. Black wants to play here, which forces white to save the 1 stone like this.
Oh, and yeah.
And then here, and again, white plays underneath. So locally, this is how black would want to continue. But this sort of includes the fact that black has to follow up with this move. This would finish the sequence here, but after which white will peep from outside. And black is closed in. It's not that black is going to die here, but black's going to be forced to a very small life in the corner.
Right.
And white's connected up on the outside. So this is what black wants to do, but it's a bit premature at this point. So first black jumps out, and white plays once here, and black plays once here. We can see it's the same. Basically, the order of moves is a bit unusual. Black started with this move, and then jumped out, but instead jumps out first. So it's a kind of a weird order of moves.
Yeah. What's the difference?
It doesn't make any difference.
Okay. All right.
It's really strange when it doesn't make any difference. I usually see AlphaGo play it in a different order than I would expect. It could be something to do with his personality.
But we're not anthropomorphizing much, are we?
Yeah. And so white plays there. Now after this, if white plays away, with something like this, for instance, now black could play here and here. And now you see it's a big difference here, because
nice for black.
This is nice for black because black is sort of out, and the white group is not alive yet. The white group. That's why black really wanted to play this sequence to start with. Black is taking away white's eyes, and is also threatening to jump into the corner. This would give black a more or less alive shape. So that's the move that black wants to play, and that is the move that white is preventing by adding this stone here. And the reason that white plays clasping the stone from the second line, like you might expect white to be playing something like this, but it makes a difference. It makes a difference on the right side here. After black plays here, at some point, there would still be some aji with that black stone inside white's territory, and it wouldn't be 100% alive either. So it's just much better aji for white to play from underneath here to get a completely alive shape. And it gives white more freedom in the upper right corner. And so black plays here. This is a really weird shape. But so I would be tempted to play here with white.
It's the obvious separating move, right?
Maybe something like this would happen. It's really complicated. And this actually, I think we're using an old file, but it doesn't matter. Because I changed that a little bit.
Did you? Okay.
But it doesn't matter. In this would black would be following up on the left side maybe, and there's some aji at A, and the white corner group is not 100% alive. It's really complicated. But I think the main idea here is that white's afraid of ending up with gote, even if white gets profit on the left side. The upper right area is significantly important, that if black can get some kind of reasonable result with sente and switch to the right side territory is going to turn into a huge territory. And it's not territory yet. So what white actually does is white jumps in here. And I think it's sort of reasonable that white chose this point to jump into the right side, because it's really very important for white to try to invade this black moyo that we have here.
The timing is important.
So that's the end of the first fight here. Both sides, at least white is very solidly alive on both sides, and black has run away. So it's a kind of a point where white can afford to play away. White doesn't have any danger of a black attack against white. Well, all of white's groups are alive, and so black plays from the corner. Although it's open underneath, the right side black has such a strong position there that black sort of wants to attack by playing from the corner. So black plays from the corner, and white plays all the way here. And usually, like, playing so close to the black stone is bad shape.
Yeah.
It's something you can see sometimes when you're invading your opponent's area of influence, because what white is trying to do is white is trying to get as much space on the side there for eyes as possible.
Right.
And it's something you see a lot when in human games too, when a player is invading the opponent's moyo, the opponent's territory, you might say. Only territory, obviously. And so it's it only works in the case where white's really desperate to get as much space as possible. Black covers and white pushes. So up to this point, it seems reasonable. And then black plays the key point here.
Ah.
So this is a real vital point in white's shape.
It is.
Like if white plays here, then black's just going to connect underneath. So that would be, it would be very painful. White would be able to get out into the center, but it would be painful. And so white plays the honey underneath here. And I just don't know what's going to happen, you know.
Well, this is just to remind folks, this is the game that was keeping you up at night, and we begin to see why. I'm gonna be dreaming about this game too. Yeah, it's just a big old fight, right?
Sequence of fights, like the fight, the new move in the lower right was really exciting and was interesting.
Yeah,
doing those variations. And then that fight on the upper side was interesting too. But this fight on the right side is much more confusing. It's like there's so much danger for white. And so this is where go ahead.
No, I want to go back. I mean, you alluded to this earlier, right? About you're being concerned about, you know, and that when the whole sequence starts out, when black is creating that, because you're looking ahead, because you know that white has to get in there. White can't possibly give black that much territory. So you were worried about that. So if we can just go back to that white extension, because I understand what you said about it. You know, white needs to extend that far, you know, when he invades.
Oh yeah, that one.
Yeah. I mean, my assumption is that there is no other play for white. I mean, white can't just play something.
Like, you know, the shape move would be to play here, but that's
not going to be good enough, right?
Right, yeah. So this is white's getting a little bit extra space with this move. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
But like it's something that a human would play in this position, but you see AlphaGo playing this kind of move much more. Than you would see, like in a number of games, we're going to see moves like this that seem to be too close.
Yeah.
And AlphaGo is making them work. Like this is actually one of the positions where it looks more natural than it usually does. So it's just a kind of a trademark move of AlphaGo. It's a move that we're going to be seeing again, and I'm going to be calling attention to it again.
I mean, it looks natural, but it just, you know, when the vital point move comes, you're not at all surprised, because it's there.
That's in the cards. And then white plays here. So this is where what white is asking is for black to cover here, in which case white can play here now.
Right.
And although black can take the one stone, white has very nice shape. Well, white's just about alive now. So this is not going to die. So that's what white is asking for black to do. And so the question is, for instance, with this move, what about this one? Now this would be the most stubborn of moves. This would be the move that's saying that black is just not going to let white live.
No.
And so it's a key point in cutting off white, and we can see creating that cutting point on the fourth line. It makes it impossible for white to escape to the center too. So this is completely cutting off white's escape route. And white has to do something on the right side. Still connecting it, the mark point doesn't work, so white plays something like this. Yeah. Okay.
Does not look like it's going to end well for white.
Well, it's going to be a ko. Because you can see at this point, it looked really dangerous for white, but black did need to put this stone back in the center. And when this is happening, we can see some damage happening to the lower right corner now. And when black plays an Atari at A, white's going to play at B to make a ko. And
that's
in this
okay,
position,
right?
white does have a forcing co-thread in the center.
That's right.
So maybe it's okay for white. This is the best I could do. And of course, the lower right corner is going to be in trouble next.
Yeah.
So maybe it's not if black can win the ko, it's going to be okay. But if black cannot win the ko, it's going to be good for white. And so this is what I finally worked out. This is my suggestion as to what white's going to do if black plays this move. Is what's going to start. Let's go through it once more. And it seems to be okay for white. Like at this point, if white jumps here, this is a point where black could avoid the ko, but if white connects on the second line there, it's going to start looking like a living group.
So that means that black move is just not working.
Maybe it's not working. So that would be the strongest move for black. But I think I found a way for white to get out of the
right. Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
And so what black does is black plays here in the center. That's a very thick move. Instead of covering here, it's a bit more aggressive because by closing off the center, it means that when white plays, when white plays something against that black stone, there's still some potential for black to save that stone on the side. But now white plays here. And you would sort of expect black to play here. This is what I would expect.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah. So this is going to happen. And it's sort of neat to notice that white hasn't really been damaged very much in the lower right area. The outside white group is not sustained so much damage. But we're not finished yet because this is a tessuji. And I had to figure this one out. I wasn't sure that it would be alive, but it looks like it's going to live because this threatens to live on the side. Black can reduce that to one eye, but then white plays here, and then here, and it looks like white's going to end up with an eye, like another eye, that is. Yeah, because now white's alive. So this is just the one variation of all sorts of things that could happen. But trying to avoid this midstream would be actually very dangerous for black. So this is an example of how white's going to handle this. And so this is the move I was worried about. But I think this variation for white to handle it. So going back to the game, black cuts underneath. And, this is where it's getting a bit crazy because a human player would hardly think of this move when white gets this Atari here. It's such strange shape. But actually, in this position, white can't really afford to make the trade now. The upper right side is still too big. Like if white plays this way, locally this is horrible shape for black.
Yeah.
But capturing the upper right area there is big.
That works very nicely.
So this is good enough for black.
Sure.
And white ends up connecting anyway. And so to a certain degree, it's working for black. And then white plays here. And this is a little Tsumego problem we have here.
Yeah.
Now this is a position where it's sort of tricky. I'm going to say that black cannot immediately kill the white group.
Okay.
And it's going to be deceiving because I'm going to show you a variation that's not 100% honest, but for the time being, it's sort of true. Like black can cut here and try to kill the white group. White cuts here. And getting this cut in is a very important part of the deal. Let's just go through that variation once more. Black cuts here.
Let's see that in slow motion.
One thing that's on the side is taking these two stones is really a bad idea for white.
Yeah.
Because at any point black can squeeze with this move, and black doesn't even have to do that. So that's generally a bad idea for white. So white plays here. So this eye on the fourth line is a false eye. So the white has this one eye there on the third and second lines, but white can cut here and cut here.
Yeah.
Let's see. In this variation, black just died. It's a dead group in the corner.
Wow. I could kind of feel that, but I couldn't read it out that fast.
Yeah. So that's the trouble.
The cut looked dangerous. Yeah.
Okay, so going back to the
black
game,
can't do that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the explanation I'm giving, and I'm going to immediately show you why it's sort of deceiving, because now white plays the Atari. It's natural for white to play this Atari, but
Sure.
now that white has played this co-threat, there's actually a variation where black can make a ko of that position.
Really?
So we'll have white play this extension on the left side. It's a really big move.
Sure.
Like if white can play here, that whole black group in the upper left area, all of those black stones sort of scattered around there are going to be in danger.
Mm-hmm.
So what can black do? Black can play this one or this one. Now this is the easy one. Like if black plays here, white just cuts here, and white cuts there and then plays here. And what this is doing is it's protecting the weak point here with the forcing move. There's no way black can there. So white has an eye at B or C. And that eye at B is the, let's just go into that variation.
Yeah, show folks that.
There's another reason white didn't want to go after those two stones, is that when white does go after them, white wants to go after them this way. And then we can see black losing the semi here.
Crash burn.
Yeah, so going after those two stones this way just wouldn't do it. That would be a dead shape.
Yeah.
So it's important for white to be going after the two stones, making an eye in the process. So that's the idea behind white not fixing that shape there. So that was the easy part. So what if white plays? If
I'm sorry,
black
did you
plays
say that?
here?
You just said that was the easy part?
Yeah, that's the easy part. Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, I was serious. So if black plays here, yeah, this one. Let's just show it again. So this was the easy way for white, and white's alive at this point.
Yeah.
So what happens if black cuts here? And I just told you that there's no way black can kill this group.
You did
because
tell me that.
After this, there's that cut there on the third line.
Right.
But actually, at this point, there's a tessage that you often see in problem books, is that black actually throws in here.
Oh, cool.
Now the idea behind this move, if white plays the connection here, at this point already, with this exchange, this stone here has lost its value, because this point here was going to be an eye for white.
Yeah.
So the moment black has played this exchange, now white doesn't get that extra eye by capturing the marked stone.
Oh,
so that's one of the values of the cut. It's only one of them. It has double value. So white does this, and we're going to say, well, that didn't work for black, right? Right. And what about the corner? Wasn't that there was that neat move where white could go after two stones, right?
Yeah.
And we can see that black stone is.
But there's a problem now. Yeah.
That's one of days in the way. Yeah. So it's sort of doing two jobs at once.
That is so nefarious.
And so black throws in, to avoid all of that stuff, white wants to take the stone. And then again, if black does, let's just have one more variation. If black does this, it's the same story as I was telling you before. White cuts here and cuts in the third line, and it's going to be a crash for black.
Right, yeah.
But instead, black plays the Atari here, and now black's just going to fight the ko whatever white does.
Okay, well, that's
again, if white connects here, then again that
reverts. Yeah.
So white's going to cut, and black just plays the ko.
Right.
And this looks like a dangerous ko for black, but actually, it's not all that much.
Oh wow!
Like the upper right corner is still alive. Even if white continues here, black can just crawl underneath.
And white is all captured now.
And that whole upper left area is pretty much dead. Yeah.
Sure, absolutely, yeah. Well, that's a great trade for black, right?
It's a great trade for black. Black would win now.
Yeah.
So although it looked really unreasonable to be playing that ko, it turns out black's not really losing that much. Interesting.
Huh.
And so a lot of it had to do with the fact that black took the geta and took this geta here, and also white played this forcing move here. So white ran out of co-threats. And just leaving this ko here is probably too dangerous for white anyway.
Right.
So to go back to the game, after this, white put a stone in. So this is reasonable. And black plays the extension. So this is a huge move. White peeps out.
Oh,
once.
yeah, I was wondering about that. Yeah, because yeah.
And then white quits. So this is really strange. Yeah, like, you know, last white has started to attack.
Right.
And white doesn't do it. So what happens if white attacks? Actually, with the black extension on the left side here, it's probably not going to work so well. Black's going to crawl once and then push through and cut here. White extends. And the problem with this is that just assuming something like this, white's not really attacking that efficiently. Like there's still that problem in the corner.
Yeah.
And with all this excitement happening on the left side, white has to remember that the lower left corner is a bit weak still with that invasion at the 3-3 point.
Right.
And so white quits. So what was the point of this exchange here? Actually,
why play it at all?
It's going to come into play later. It's really hard to explain at this point. Why don't I put a variation in? There's all this stuff that can happen after white gets a stone here, and we'll just have some random move for black. And white has this forcing move here and a potential cut here. So there's this kind of stuff and all sorts of variations of that. This is the most straightforward version of all this kind of stuff that's going to happen with a potential cut in the upper left area there because white's played that. And it all stems from the fact that white played this move once to make it a bit different. So there's all sorts of stuff that's going to happen much later in the game.
Okay.
Like it's going to be an end game play, but white's prepared for that. But for the time being, black is starting to attack the lower right area. One can see that white group is looking a bit cramped. And if we look at the overall position, like white has this nice territory in the lower left corner. That's about 15 points almost. A good 10 points in the upper left corner. And something less than 10 points on the upper side. So those three would add up to more than 30 points. And then there's almost 10 points on the right side too. So white has about 40 points of territory. And black has a territory of more than 10 points on the lower side. But then both the left side and the upper right corner is open underneath. It's really less than 10 points. And the left side is, like I was showing you, there's some potential for white to look at some weaknesses there. So it's about maybe 10 points. So black is way behind in territory.
Yeah.
But black does have some potential in the center. So it's looking like it's going to be a game where white has a lead in territory and black is going to be catching up by making some territory in the center. So this is what I'm sort of expecting here.
Okay.
Okay, so white plays the peep here and covers. And this seems reasonable. This is forcing. And white cuts once and then plays here. So white's starting to move out into the center, plays the Atari here. And white's sort of asking black how black wants to play, but I think this is bad. Black played the connection here. I would have captured the one stone.
Yeah, why not? I mean, it just seems obvious.
Well, it gives white a forcing move, for instance, here, or
okay.
The wedge. So there's some extra forcing potential for white there. But I would say that capturing the one stone is more important because it connects up to that black group on the right side.
Right.
And there's a couple of points difference. There's 2 or 3 points difference in territory too. And so it's a slight gain in territory as well as connecting up to the right side. And for some reason, I'm sort of worried about that right side black group.
Yeah, well,
you would think it's thickness, wouldn't you?
I mean, I got to say, for some reason, I'm worried about it too, even though it does look awful thick, yes.
And so white plays here. This is a beautiful tesuji.
Uh-huh.
In that, in forcing black to play here, we see that white has forced black into an empty triangle shape. And so in itself, it's already good just because of that. But it also has a more practical use also. The whole point of what's happening here is that if white pulls back here, white's going to have a connected shape, but only one eye there.
Right.
So this is slightly not very satisfying for white. It's not a living shape.
Mm.
So white wants to be able to cover here, but for the time being, it doesn't work. And all of this is going to come together with this attachment that white's just played. So there's it works together to make this covering move feasible, because when black cuts here, if we look at it locally, there's no way for white to capture that cutting stone. Like if white does that, black just captures the two stones.
Wow. Yeah.
So it'd be bad for white. So after playing once, after allowing black to cut, now white plays here. And so this is setting up a way to capture the black stone at A. For instance, if black plays down, which is the move that you really want to play, now white can capture this because white has that forcing move there. So it makes a whole big difference.
Yeah,
and the same would be true even if black took in the ladder. Like if black, let's just add that variation. Like if with this move, if black took in the ladder, it would still be the same thing. Because at this point, black would be in trouble.
Oh, that's cool.
It would be exactly the same problem.
Yep.
And so black plays here. And this helps black on the lower side too. For instance, if white plays from above like this, we can see there's the cut here. And so that's not going to work for white. It's going to be a ladder. So white plays from underneath and here. And so we're coming to a resolution for this fight here. So white's alive, and white plays out into the center. And it's like I was saying, it looks like this is going to be the start of an end game.
Mm-hmm.
And all of the fighting, there was a fight on the upper side, on the upper right area, and on the lower right area. And it looks like they've finished the fighting. That's the impression I got at this point, at last. And it wasn't correct. It wasn't correct.
Not even close to being correct. You got, no. I mean, without giving away too much for part two, this was kind of like the, and I'm not a boxing fan, but I mean, the preliminary, the undercards, where they have the other little fights.
Yeah.
I mean, things get incredibly hairy in the second half of this.
But let's just sort of finish this first part. I think I'm going to stop with this move.
Yeah.
But just to finish it off, this is a position where I am expecting sort of, if I'm looking at this for the first time, I would be expecting it to be going into an endgame.
Absolutely.
And so I would be looking at the territories, and as I was saying, white has more than 10 points in the lower left area.
Yep.
And more than 10 points in the upper left. And then the upper side and the right side are less than 10 points.
Okay.
And now the lower side is slightly less than 10 points also. So if we add all of those, it's roughly about 50 points for white.
Right.
Black has more than 10 points in the lower right area and much less than 10 points in the upper right area. So that's 20 points. And as I was saying, once white has played this move in the center, let's just have a random move or add a variation here. White always has this threat here of cutting off some black stones on the upper side. Big liability there for black.
Mm-hmm.
And so this left side is not really worth counting yet. It's like it looks like it could be 10 points, but black has to deal with that weakness there before black can really say it's 10 points. So black has, and on the right side of the board, black has 20 points in the two corners, and then a few points attached to that black thickness there.
Mm.
So black has a lot of catching up to do. Like even if we count 10 points on the left side, black is still about 15 points behind. and black has to gain some points in the center.
And so has to pay Comey too.
To pay Comey. So it looks like black has a lot of catching up to do. I did go into some variations, try to figure it out. It looks like it's going to be a fairly close game, but I would be rooting for white in this position. I would say that white has in territory.
Yeah, because you're saying basically that black it's an uphill battle for black to catch up.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of black territory in the center, but I have the feeling it's not going to be enough. Maybe it's a really difficult end game because playing the first move, if black's going to surround the center, the first move in the center is going to be difficult.
Right.
So the first few moves, in a position with this much space in the center, choosing the correct moves is going to be difficult for a top pro.
Yeah, I mean, my feeling as an amateur is that I would love to have white in this because I'm like, yeah, go ahead, make your territory. It doesn't look that hard as long as you don't get too crazy and die in the center there, which looks like it'd be difficult. You just have to sort of nibble away, right?
Well, I'm not really going to go out and say that white's going to win,
right?
Because it's actually pretty close. And actually, if black plays what I think is the correct variation, white's moves are pretty difficult too.
Okay.
And so it's going to be difficult endgame for both players. And it's going to be like, I actually tried to work out what might happen, and it's more than 100 moves. And as I was saying, the first few moves in this endgame are really very, very difficult for top human players. And so I can make a variation of 120 moves or so, and I won't be sure if the first few moves are right.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's sort of pointless. But my feeling is that I would prefer to play with white. Yeah.
Pointless but fun, right?
It's a lot of fun. I learned something in trying it, and I have my idea of what the best move might be. Yeah.
Wow. All right, so this is a key point. This is where this sort of piece of the game finishes part one, and then we'll pick up with part two, same time tomorrow, and show you. I don't want to give away too much. Well, actually, why don't you give folks a little teaser? I think.
You look at this position, and this is where we're going to start tomorrow. In a few moves, you won't recognize the game.
Wow.
So you have to be very sharp at looking in the beginning of the video because it's going to change quickly. And it came as a huge surprise to me. And everything is going to change completely, and it's going to fall apart. So it's going to be exciting.
Yes, you're going to have a great time. All right, so we'll wrap up this part one of Game 10. It's actually, coincidental, but it's very cool that, nice round number. Game 10 winds up being such a fascinating and long game. So with that, we'll wrap it for part one of Game 10. Thanks for watching. Thanks, as always, Michael. And see you guys tomorrow night, same time.